All right, good morning, all. Phil here from Peterson Farms in Nashville. And today, we're going to be working on the Ram 2500 6.7 Cummins diesel. It's been a great truck, but like all vehicles, it needs a little bit of TLC, some maintenance. So today, we're going to change the oil and the fuel filters. So hang in there and come along. I'll show you how it's done, or at least how I do it. So some of the tools you'll need, obviously, you'll need to order the oil filter. This is the front or the rear fuel filter. And this is the front fuel filter. That actually goes right there. That's the rear fuel filter. Takes a little doing there and a couple specialty tools. And these are the tools that I basically use for this oil change and fuel filter change. But minimal tools and pretty simple job. If you don't have a hoist, well, then you're like me and you have to wing it on the ground. I'm already have the oil draining into a bucket provided by Lowe's, and I just cut it down so it's easy to get down underneath here, because you could do this on the ground too, but I put it on some ramps in order to make it a little bit more ergonomic to get underneath here. So we're still getting some of that old oil out. So in the meantime, well, we'll go ahead and, for time wise, most of it's out. So this just takes a 3/8 regular wrench. You just put it in the little hole there. And then I usually wear gloves, but I could not find my gloves for some reason. I had a whole pack of gloves that I had purchased. It makes it much nicer if you have gloves. And then I don't know what the actual torque range is on here, but you do not want to over tighten it. You just want to tighten it snug and then just a little bit more, not much there. So it's easy for the next guy to get out, but not loose enough to where it vibrates out, especially if you're playing that big old bass that the Ram 2500 has. We're going to put this trash can lid underneath this oil catch, and that way we will hopefully minimize how much oil we get when oil onto the ground when we remove the filter. That's where the filter is, folks. Way back in there. Way back in there. So you say, Phil, how are we going to get that out? Don't worry. Let me show you. We have one of these and one of these, which I've had many comments from, I wouldn't say followers, I would say anti-Phil, about, oh, you can't use one of these, you're going to screw up the oil filter, you're going to squeeze it so hard, it's going to crimp it, it's going to scratch it, it's going to dent it. Get over it, folks. I use these and I love them. And I'll use one of these. Oh, you're just afraid to get your hands dirty. You just put a thumb in it. That's how I do it. And you just deal with the oil that comes out. But I use one of these, which you can get on both of these items on Amazon. And I'll leave a link in the description below. All right, so we got to remember, righty, tighty, lefty, loosey. Let's just see for kicks if it's loose enough to remove by hand. Oh, no look. Oh, I could use just a little help. And that's the key. You don't want to put these things on unbelievably tight. You just want to put them on there a little more than snug. Just grab it down lower on the filter, and it just allows you to turn it just enough to where you're able to get it by hand. Oh my gosh, I scratched the old oil filter. What am I gonna do? What am I gonna do now? But see, you get it just loose enough. Now, key is your bucket underneath the catch location. Because the problem with this is the oil's gonna drip down onto the frame and then into the bucket, hopefully. But because you can't pull this oil filter out without tilting it. So we're going to go ahead, undo it, and you start to feel it get looser and looser, and you just sort of wiggle it a little, and then it releases. Now, I gotta lay this oil filter down on the frame right there without hopefully losing a whole lot of oil. Then we're gonna screw this cap onto the top of the oil filter, like so. And then we're gonna pull it out, up, and out. And you don't lose any used oil. Easy peasy. But look at that. Is that nice or what? Then you just want to reach up in there and clean all that off. There's threads up there. And just use a lint-free rag. Alright folks, got the new oil filter. Got the Mopars, I guess last time too. I've got the synthetic Providence automotive diesel oil 1540 synthetic blend, and I just buy that at Rural King. You know, I don't know what you guys think, but I've been running this oil for a while. Get a funnel here. I usually just try to wing it, but since you folks are watching, we're going to try to do it the right way. And then we just pour a little oil in the filter so we don't have as much of a dry start. It takes quite a bit of oil, but I try to get at least a half or 3/4 of it full. Now, this is where that little screw-in cap comes in handy, especially. You unscrew it, transfer it from the old filter onto the new filter. Oh, I almost forgot. Let me get rid of this. I'm sure if I didn't do this, somebody'd say, "Hey Phil, you forgot to put oil on the seal." Hoo hoo hoo, big dummy. But always put a little oil on the seal, just to get a good seal for when you put it up there against the flange of the oil drain. So this is where I put the little screw on. Now you don't want to tighten it down real tight. You just want to snug it in, because you're going to have to unloosen it with one hand. With oil in there, as you can see, not leaking all over the place. We're just going to put this back in, put it down onto the shelf that we previously had to lay it in, and then you just undo the little adapter like that. Look at that. With one hand, you reach in there, grab the oil filter that's still nice and clean, not slippery, and you struggle around for a bit to try to put it on righty-tighty. And you can feel the nipple with your index finger to get you sort of in the area. And then you can see the alignment. And you just get it started, and then you take it to snug with your hand. That's snug. And they say usually once you make contact, you want to get to about a turn and a half. Oh my gosh. I'm not bending anything. I'm not scratching or tearing anything up. That should be good enough. Right there. Now, my friends, is how you change the oil filter on a Ram 2500 6.7 Cummins diesel engine. Now we are ready to fill with oil. All right, I'm not going to bother you with the rest of the oil change. You just fill the unit up with the recommended amount of oil and the recommended oil of your choosing. I choose to use synthetic Providence brand from Rural King, but you can use whatever you want. Yeah, I'm sure there's other opinions on what you should use. All right, folks, here is the front fuel filter, and it's going to take a 1 1/8 inch socket. This fits a little loose, but it gets the job done. And then there's a little drain valve down here that you want to turn on, but make sure that you have something underneath to catch any excess fluid or fuel coming out. So I got that on. And you can hear it draining down into that catch pan. And that's why that trash can lid comes in handy, because it does come down over the transfer case, and that trash can lid just catches anything that misses the bucket. I'm gonna let that drain for just a few minutes. Try to get as much fuel out of there as possible. A couple other tools. This tool helps when you have to take the O-ring off, which I'll show you here in a minute. But a small screwdriver or a little nail will do the same. And then we use the Mopar fuel filter cartridge, like it's a MO291. MO291. Comes packaged nice and neat with a little instruction if you need that, or if you choose to use it, since I've done these a few times. It's always good to refresh your memory if it's been a while. But you want to keep that O-ring from getting lost, and also keep it as clean as possible. And then this will go down after we replace the O-ring, and this will go down over the female threaded part. This is oval, so that's one thing you want to keep in mind. You'll see that on the fitting once we pull the old filter off, which sounds like all the fuel's drained out, or as much of the fuel drained out as possible. And let's go ahead and crack that open. There. It's always good to put your two hands on here just to give it a little leverage, because it is a little tight. The pressure, son. But once it starts going, you only get a couple clicks a turn. All right. Once it starts going, then you can do it with one hand, and then eventually do it by hand. But that O-ring really sucks that on. All right, let's see if we can get this off. And then you hear the additional fuel and see the additional fuel in the reservoir there. All right, sounds like it's all out there. Now this can be a little difficult sometimes. It's not this time, but you just pull that filter cartridge out, the old one, and you still got some fluid in there. And here's the old one versus the new one. Not too bad, but you can tell this one's definitely dirty. So discard this one. And then, like I said, this has an oblong area, but first, well, since you got the fuel cartridge out, it's easier to go ahead and get this O-ring, just pull it off, like so. See here. The new one, I just sort of string my fingers through it, and then make sure I get it all the way around, Okay, let's try it this way. There we go. But you want to make sure it's on top of the bottom flange, but all the way down to the bottom flange. And I can't show you that, but you'll see what I'm talking about when you go to replace your O-ring. And next up, go ahead and put your filter in. Looks like the oblong is going that way. So you just want to make sure that you get that lined up. And it'll let you know because it won't fit down in there. You can turn it a little bit. You want to make sure it's engaged. It pushes down when it's on there. There. It's all the way on. You got your new O-ring on. Let's go ahead and screw the cap back on without cross-threading. I'm glad I just got the cap back on with all that debris that just blew because of the wind. And then righty-tighty. And you want to, I'm not sure what the torque specs are. Might look those up or I'll try to post them. But you want to get that on there tight, snug tight, a little more snug than snug tight. And it's gonna keep, that's how you complete your front fuel filter replacement. Just remember to tighten up this drain valve after you're done changing your filters out. Here again, there is a drain tube here, and we're going to attempt to drain some of the fluid out of here so that we don't get totally drenched when it comes off. So have that catch pan handy, kids. So you've drained the fluid from the fuel filter. Then you have a coupler, which you're not going to be able to see from that angle. Oh, God. That you just disconnect. Easier said than done. But a coupler right there. And it just connects to a harness that's up on the frame rail. And then we do use, remember these boys for the oil filter? Well, you use it in this application for the fuel filter. Let's see if I can get these tend to be a little tight for some reason. I just gotta get it to the point where it ain't so tight. All you're gonna hear me is grunting. So when removing this filter, you're definitely gonna scratch it up. It's the part of it. All right. And that's what it looks like after you remove the fuel filter. You just want to make sure that that's nice and clean friggin' debris, and don't damage that sensor that's coming out of there. For this next part, you can see where this is somewhat chewed up, because before I bought this wrench to help take this off, I was using channel locks, and every time I go to take this off, it runs a risk of having to replace it. But this special wrench helps bring this sensor, it connects, but as you can see, normally that would be a very tight fit, but you're gonna have to be really careful when how we go about putting the pressure on here to spin that off. If I had two hands, it'd be a whole lot easier. I mean, if I had two sets of hands. Whew. That was touch and go. Touch and go. So, word of advice. Pick yourself up one of these tools before you ever attempt taking this out the first time. Because a pair of channel locks does not do this any good on the plastic. So, Phil's tip. Critical tip. Now, one thing about this, the way they package these here, there's a couple O-rings, and in the past, some brands don't package them outside of the filter. They stuff them down in there. Crazy, huh? But you got two O-rings here. You want to make sure get those on the filter correctly. This one here just comes off like so. We'll make sure you don't touch that sensor or damage that sensor. You just put the new one on like so, down to the flange. So it's all the way on the flange. And then this O-ring just goes in the flange on the filter. Just want to make sure that stays on there, this filter. Then you want ever so slightly, gently, thread that sensor into the top of your filter here. And probably be tough to get off now because of that O-ring. And then you want to reinstall it with your special filter sensor wrench. And I probably just had it on too tight before. There, snug in about 3/4 of a turn. And then you're ready to reinstall. Don't forget this. You're ready to reinstall your fuel filter and gasket. And you just install it in the reverse order and then make your connection to the coupler on the frame. I'm not going to show you all that. So you just know some directions. On the sensor, you get it snug and then a half turn. And then on the filter itself, it's snug and then 1/4 turn for those keeping score. All right, friends, that is how you complete the oil change, the fuel filter front and back change on your Ram 2500 6.7 Cummins diesel engine. So, hope you got something out of that. And any tips or suggestions that you may have, I've heard a lot of them, but please share in the comments. And if you would, hit that like button on the way out. It really helps our algorithm on these things that we're doing. And consider subscribing, because this is the kind of stuff we do around here on the farm, even in the rain. But subscribing doesn't cost you a darn thing. It just says you're following our channel, and when we push videos out, if you choose, you'll receive those videos whenever we post a new video. We do these sort of videos for your entertainment as well as educational purpose, and for our friends and family, and especially for those future generations, for without these videos, they may never ever get to know me. That's a good thing, right? But anyway, God bless you all till next time, and thanks for stopping in Peterson Farms in Nashville.